Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Jumpstart. I am MegapieMan, and today with me are David and Josh from Dancing Dinosaur Games, and today we are going to be talking about their Kickstarter project known as Collateral. Why don't we have you two introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is you do at Dancing Dinosaur.
Alright, well, my name's Josh, and I'm the Managing Director and Project Lead on Collateral. I do pretty much everything I need to do. Yeah.
And
job entitles a lot of different stuff.
Yeah. And I'm David. I'm the senior programmer on the team. I help Josh out a lot. I'm also one of the directors of the company. Yeah, and I do quite a lot of the various programming tasks. We kind of spread the load around.
You guys wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, you kind of got to in a small company.
Yeah.
So Collateral is your first game, right?
Yes, although we have done a couple of others, but nothing this big.
Yeah, just a couple of game jam projects, so 48-hour type things.
Those can be good to help you break out into the market and get an idea of the feel of what you're going for. So what exactly is Collateral?
Collateral is an open-world vehicular combat game. We're making it for PC. It's got a cyberpunk setting. You sort of play as this character is called Zach Edgewater. You drive around the city in your cab, picking up passengers, dropping them off. You've got a selection of weapons on your cab to help fend off anyone who might be gunning for you or your passenger. Yeah.
So it's kind of like Crazy Taxi meets Twisted Metal, that sort of thing.
Yeah, sort of, with a dash of Blade Runner and Fifth Element added in, just for fun.
Yeah, the Fifth Element. That's definitely something that I got from your screenshots. Because something that I thought that was really cool from what I saw of Collateral is in a future setting, whereas most car combat games, even if they're in a future setting, they're more based on wheeled vehicles on the ground, whereas Collateral has hover vehicles and is a bit more open. One thing that I did want to ask is whereas in other car combat games where you have to focus on actually having ground below you depending upon where you go, is Collateral's gameplay going to be more of a horizontal, sort of flat gameplay, or are you actually going to be able to fly all around the map?
You can change elevation. We have a system in place at the moment where you push a button and it sort of propels you up and propels you down. It's not a full free movement through the 6 degrees, but yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I definitely wanted to ask on, because I didn't know if it would be sort of like you'd be flying through the town, or if you would have to specifically stay on different elevations.
Yeah, well, we did play around with sort of having like 3 layers sort of systems and stuff like that, but in the end people just wanted to have freedom of movement, so we gave them as much as we could.
I can see how flying around all the place could be definitely a little bit more complicated.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It made some interesting challenges when it came to developing the game.
So are you guys looking for both a single-player and multiplayer focus, or are you only going to be single-player, only multiplayer?
We're looking at just having a single-player experience because we want to make it, a story-driven and have a nice, a
nice single-player experience.
Yeah.
So is it going to be more of a linear kind of thing, or is it going to be like you get put into this huge sandbox world and you go around doing different missions?
We're trying to make it as sandboxy as possible. Yeah. It's posed a few problems so far, but I think we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, so from so far, it's definitely looked pretty interesting with the different themes that you go on. I think one of the screenshots you had like a giant statue of Elvis or something. So you've got some pretty interesting buildings and architecture going on in the city that you have.
Yeah, we wanted to make these landmarks that people would recognize and be able to come back to time and time again. The Elvis character you mentioned is actually Big Larry. He's one of the faction leaders. He owns a chain of burrito stores and is one of the more influential men in the city.
Chain of burrito stores, at least are running a city. I like the way you guys think.
Yep.
So, what is some of the combat aspects of Collateral? Because there's definitely a lot of guns and combat thrown into it. What are some of the aspects that you're going to be having with that?
Well, the player will have a frame on their cab which they can equip weapons to. There'll be quite a wide variety of things. We've got things from various types of machine guns to missiles and plasma weapons, ion cannon, and we'll even have ridiculous things like burrito cannon, which you can get from doing missions for Big Larry.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, we've also got AI vehicles that fly around the city, and they're also armed, so the combat can be completely bizarre with you having assortment of things like your burrito cannons and your flaming chicken missiles or something, and then you can be fighting off against just a couple of guys with some machine guns. So yeah, there's plenty of variety in the combat.
It's nice to hear that you guys are trying to be super serious with this game and are throwing in a lot of fun aspects. I feel that a lot of games these days try to be a little bit too serious.
Yeah, that's one thing we're definitely going for. We definitely want to have a light-hearted, fun game. It's kind of what we enjoy doing.
So, since your game's going to be focused on single player, is there going to be stuff that takes place outside of just being in the vehicle, or are you strictly going to be in the vehicle for the entire game?
Well, we want to keep the player inside the vehicle because, well, the environment is a little difficult to navigate on foot, given that there is no ground. Well, there are rooftops and such, and there will be pedestrians wandering about there, but the player will be restricted to the taxi. We feel that gives the player a bit more of a connection to the vehicle, and makes them feel more like that is their character.
Are there going to be more vehicles to play as besides the taxicab, or is the taxicab just going to be the main thing that you're going to be focusing on?
The taxicab will be the main thing we're focusing on at present. However, as David was saying before, we've got a number of different frames which will change it up a bit. Each frame will have a different amount of hard points, and it will also affect how your cab handles. So bigger, heavier frames with more weapons will slow you down, whereas a lighter frame with less weapons will let you speed up and probably lower your health points a little bit.
So you have a bit of customization and upgrades thrown in the mix.
Yeah, we've sort of tried to go for a bit of a mech warrior feel with the weapons. You can select your own custom weapon groups, and you can fit any weapon in any hard point.
Are they going to be based on like a progression system in which you have to upgrade through levels, or is it going to be a cash system where you get enough cash you can buy any upgrade in the game?
It'll be a cash system with level restricting weapons. Like some will be locked at the beginning of the game, and you'll unlock them as you do missions for different factions, etc.
So how big would you say that your main city is going to be? Are you just going to stay in the one city? Is it going to be multiple cities?
It's going to be the one city, but there's multiple districts. At present, we have 2 districts completely fleshed out. We're currently working on the 3rd district. As the player progresses, they will unlock new districts, so there'll be new areas to go and explore with lots of fun, crazy, zany things going on.
I can assume that each district will have different kinds of themes. What are some of the themes that you guys are going to be playing off of?
Well, currently we've got the red light and the green zone. The green zone's sort of your standard commercial residential district. Red light district is full of strippers and clowns. We've got the industrial zone, which is the next one we're working on. We've also got Chinatown, the destroyed zone, CBD CBD sort of office building setup, and just stuff like that.
Are you guys basing this off of any actual city, or are you just trying to combine a bunch of different ideas together?
We're just sort of putting a whole heap of ideas together. It's something we came up with a little while back, and we've just been adding to ever since.
How long have you guys been working on Collateral?
It started off about 2 years ago now. It was originally a student project that was worked on by a couple of the members of the team, and at the end of their project, which was about 6 months, they decided that they wanted to continue developing it. So as of about the start of last year, the group just got together and continued to build it up. So yeah, the current iteration has been in development for about 18 months.
Were you guys part of that student project, or were you brought on later?
I was part of the student project. I was the original concept for the game. and we've sort of expanded the team out. There's most of the original art team is still on the project. However, we've got new programmers and we've got some additional artists recently.
Yeah, so I joined the team as of last year.
When originally looking at the game, I kind of got, from the way that the game looked, I got like a Twisted Metal or Interstate 76, that sort of car combat side of kind of feel from it. But from what you guys have been talking about, it sounds like the game is actually a little bit different than the sort of big arena sort of car combat that we're used to. What are some of the other inspirations that go into Collateral? You mentioned the Fifth Element before, the movie. If for those of you who don't know what the movie's about, it's basically a movie set in the future with Bruce Willis driving a taxi cab. What are some of the other inspirations that have gone into Collateral?
Probably one of the biggest inspirations, especially for me, was the old game called Quarantine. It was around in the early to mid-90s. It was a Doom clone game, pretty much similar to what we're doing with Collateral, except you're on the ground. And I just remember as a kid playing many hours of that game. And yeah, when it came to doing our end-of-year project, I actually pitched making a remake of Quarantine, and it sort of developed into something different. All the different people getting their ideas in, and yeah, it's become something much bigger and much better, I feel.
Well, it's definitely good to hear that you guys work well together, and it's really cool to see what a combination of ideas can definitely turn out. One thing that I do have to ask you guys about, now I have heard some interesting company names in the past, such as like Smudged Cat, and most recently I've heard of Buffalo Vision, but is there a story behind Dancing Dinosaur, for the reason why you picked that for your company name? Because it's an interesting name, I have to say.
Yeah, it is. When we were working on the school project, we were sort of tossing up as to whether or not we're going to take this further, and we kept thinking of different names we'd call ourselves, and we came up with a heap of different names, but none of them really fit that well. And then one day, one of our artists was animating a dinosaur doing the twist, and it made everyone on the team fall over laughing, and we went, okay, throw a tutu on the dinosaur and we'll call ourselves Dancing Dinosaur Games. And that's kind of where it came from. Like, just spare of the moment, someone did something funny, and yeah, it's stuff.
I had to make sure I asked that, because it's definitely an interesting name.
Well, yeah, that's one thing we also wanted to make sure is that the name of the company is something that stood out, something that people would remember easily. It
definitely does. Now, you guys are based in Australia. At least I think you two are. Is your entire team based in Australia as well?
Yeah, currently the whole team's in Melbourne. We've got a couple of people doing audio for us in the US, but they're set up as their own companies. We just contract them. So, yeah.
I remember you guys talking a little bit over the weekend that you were at some convention. What was that, and how did that go for you?
Yeah, that was PAX Oz, so it's the first time that PAX has come to Australia, and yeah, that went pretty well for us. Yeah, we were on display there. We had plenty of people come and try the game, and yeah, we got a lot of good feedback. We even had a couple of people from the media come and do a short review for it, and that worked out pretty well. So yeah, a lot of great attention.
The best was probably we got an article in Kotaku on Kotaku, sorry, the third day of PAX. So yeah.
I'm glad you guys could get out there and get some actual feedback and talk to people, help get some feedback for the games. That's one of the more difficult things that can be to do when you're trying to make a game, is to get the proper kind of feedback that you need. Because when you're on the internet, people will sometimes say anything and not give the greatest feedback. So getting some hands-on feedback is definitely good. And that's gotta be a pretty cool feeling to be in the first Australian PAX, the first time that it's actually in Australia you guys were there. So that's gotta be pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. It was a big pickup for us. I mean, development at times, especially when you're working on a project this long, sort of goes through highs and lows, and there's nothing better than giving your game to somebody and they absolutely love it. I actually got a comment. We did another event a couple of weeks back called Avcon, and one of the guys there gave us the best feedback I've gotten so far, which was, I'll be waiting for years for someone to make a game like this. So, yeah.
Well, that's gotta warm the heart in order to hear something like that.
Oh, definitely, especially when you put so much time and effort into something.
Now, I don't know if this is something that you guys are still thinking of, but what was the decision to go for a more linear story path instead of going into a multiplayer thing, which is something that I could definitely see this game doing? I understand you guys are a small company, so it might be due to that, but was there more ideas to go behind to go for a more of a single player side effect instead of going for a multiplayer?
A big part of it was probably experience. We haven't worked on that many multiplayer. We've tried to do a few little multiplayer projects. They've worked out all right, but something of this size we haven't really done before. Also, I personally prefer a lot of single-player games. I do play multiplayer, but I prefer something with a story, something that's not just the same repetitive action and I'm just scoring kills against some guy I don't know. Yeah. I used to like the old games where you'd buy a game and you'd have, 10 hours of good story and stuff like that.
Right. There's been a lot of people specifically going over to just the multiplayer side, kind of just making a base mechanics and letting people do whatever they want in it instead of trying to tell an actual story or that kind of thing. Yeah,
look, that's definitely easier. In a lot of ways, you don't have to come up with a story, you don't have to come up with a way to deliver the story. But at the same time, I enjoy those games, but I think some of them are lacking a bit of substance.
I can definitely see
that's just my personal view, though. I mean, I'm one person, so yeah.
I can
We're
understand
sort of trying to make a game.
Yeah, I can understand where people who have just the specific multiplayer games are coming from as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a good market out there for it. It's just we also wanted to make a game that we want to play as well. And yeah.
Right. So are you guys making your own custom engine, or are you working in Unreal or Unity?
Yeah, we're actually using Unreal, so we're using UDK for development. It's worked out to be a nice engine to actually work with. The original project was using another engine, but it was a little harder to build on, so yeah, we prefer using UDK for that. Yeah, and our team has gained a fair bit of experience with it now, so yeah, we're feeling pretty confident with our development there.
What was the decision to go with UDK instead of something like Unity? Because I believe Unity is free, whereas UDK you have to actually pay a license in order to be able to sell a game that you make using it.
One of the main reasons we went with UDK was it already had some of the vehicle stuff in there for us. Well, we thought it'd be easy to use. Some of it turned out not to be so easy to use. But also the licensing cost for UDK it's not too exuberant. I mean, they take 25% of your profits after the first 50k for indies, which is, I mean, when you look at the engine, it's not too bad. Also, the lighting in the engine is absolutely beautiful. The tools are great, and we had a few guys on the team who already had a fair bit of experience with it. So,
yeah, that and we've also used Unity for some of our smaller projects, and we just felt that it wasn't quite what we wanted to use for a larger project.
Right. So you guys do have a Indiegogo campaign going on currently. What was the decision?
Kickstarter.
Sorry. The reason why I get confused sometimes because I realize that Kickstarter usually only works in the U.S., whereas Indiegogo can work anywhere. So I apologize for that. But what was the decision to go with Kickstarter instead of trying to find a publisher or someone who could give you that little bit of extra cash to make your game everything that you would like it to be instead of trying to crowdsource it?
Mostly because we want to try and keep control of everything as much as possible. We don't want to be tied down to a publisher and some of the horror stories you hear about what's coming, like what publishers make you do, etc. And yeah, want to keep control ourselves mostly. Yeah.
So how much money are you looking to raise?
15,000. It's a small, modest amount, but I mean we've put a lot of money into the game already ourselves, and we don't want to ask people for a large amount, which is more than what we really need to finish it.
Right. How long do you have the campaign going for, and how much have you guys raised so far?
Well, it's been going for 12 days so far, and we have $6,345. We've got another 18 days to go, so...
It's going pretty well.
Yeah, it's looking like it's going to be successful.
Have you guys been getting a lot of feedback from that campaign?
We've gotten a heap of people contacting us saying, they're willing to help us work on the project, and other people just saying they love it. Some of the comments are really nice. It's been really good.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I can assume that you're looking at a PC release of the game. Well, you're looking at releasing the game on any other platform, Mac, Linux, maybe console platforms.
Not at the moment. We're basically just focusing on getting it out on PC. Mac and Linux is something that we'll consider in the future because there's a market for it. Consoles, we're not really looking to release on. I mean, it'd kind of be nice. We've got control support for the PC release, but it's a matter of getting the actual license for releasing on consoles, which may be a little bit too much for us at present because we're still just a small company.
Right. Although I do hear a lot of consoles are starting to try to open up indies.
Oh, that's definitely true. There's more and more stuff coming along. In fact, if we were to start this project now, we'd probably be looking at doing console support. But it's easier to develop the game for console and PC at the same time as opposed to make it for PC and then port it across.
Right. Right. I can see
if we would try to port it. Yeah, if we try to port it at the moment, we'd have to go back and rework a lot of art assets that just aren't optimized for console. Yeah.
It's interesting to hear that you say that you do have controller support enabled, because just by what it looks like, the game looks like it would be something that would work well with a controller. Would you say that it necessarily works better with a controller than a keyboard, or have you not necessarily narrowed down the control schemes yet?
It all depends on who you ask. There's members of the team who are avid console players, and they love the controller, whereas I myself, I prefer PC and I prefer the keyboard and mouse.
Personally, I test the game on both, and I'm actually fairly comfortable with either one, really. I mean, I do a lot of my testing in the office using the keyboard and mouse, but when we go to expos, I'll demonstrate using the controller, and I've, really got no problem with either one.
Well, that's good to hear. There's some games that sometimes they just don't work on both. They either work on the keyboard or they work on the controller. And it's definitely good to hear that you guys are able to narrow down a control scheme that works on both for someone who doesn't have a controller, so that they have the same amount of control that someone who does have a controller would have.
Yeah, well, it's very important for us, the controllers as well. I mean, it's hard to get a good control scheme working. One of the things we're also making sure we do is customizable controls. So if the player's not happy with the layout of the controls on the controller or the keyboard, they can go in and change it however they want.
That's always good to hear. People love being able to rebind their keys.
Yeah, definitely. And it also stopped a lot of fights in the office because people were always like, oh no, this button should do this, no, this button should do this.
Like, everyone calm down, we'll let you rebind the keys so everybody can be happy.
Exactly.
So what sort of distribution platforms are you looking at? I can assume that you're looking at Steam, but are you looking at anything else, such as, like, Dinosaur or your own sort of distribution platform?
We're going to be releasing through Dinosaur's alpha funding, which is essentially their early release system. That's our first distribution. And we're also on Steam Greenlight, so, assuming that goes ahead, then we'll be on Steam as well. We're considering the possibility of other platforms, but at the moment it's, mostly through Dinosaur and, doing our best on Greenlight.
Since you guys are saying that you were doing the alpha funding through Dinosaur, if you do get on Greenlight, are you thinking of something of maybe doing an early access beta sort of thing for Collateral, or do you think that wouldn't work with the kind of game that it is?
Oh, definitely. That's exactly what we're doing with Dinosaur, the early access stuff. And if we got on Greenlight, we'd do exactly the same thing. We want to give people access to the game as soon as possible. Actually, anyone who backs it in the Kickstarter for $25 or more will get access to the game probably about a month after the Kickstarter ends. And The other thing to note about that, though, is we're deliberately keeping the story out of the game at this point in time because we don't want to give it to people in trickles. We want to give it to them in one big lump. So when you do get early access to the game, you're going to have the game with missions and stuff in it, but you're not necessarily going to have all the story line. So
You want to keep the story as a big surprise once you have everything filled out, so you don't give it to people in chunks. I can definitely
pretty much.
understand that.
Yeah, we don't want to get to some point in the story where people want to continue and then they got to wait 3 to 6 months for another update.
Yeah, yeah. I can see how that would be both annoying for someone playing it as well as you guys who want them to play to keep continuing through the story, but you can't because you got to continue working on it.
Exactly.
About what price point do you think that you'll put Collateral out for?
We're looking around the $20, $25 point at present, but I mean that's open to change. It all depends on what our marketing people tell us, etc.
So you guys have a Facebook or Twitter that we can use to follow the development progress of Collateral?
Yeah, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we've got an IndieDB account, which, you can check out the developer updates on any of those. We've also got our own website, dancingdinosaurgames.com. There's all the links to our social media through that.
We also do weekly updates on everything, letting people know what we've been doing throughout the week.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me for this Jumpstart episode. David and Josh from Dancing Dinosaur Games, talking about your car game Collateral. Definitely looks very interesting. I'll be looking forward to it. Looks like a not too serious, fun open world thing that lets you do pretty much anything that you want from the way that sounds like in it.
That's on what we're going for, yeah.
Do you guys have anything else specific that you would like to say about the game before we wrap it up?
I can't really think of anything. I think we've covered most of the bases.
Alright, well thank you again for joining me. Be sure to check these guys out on their Kickstarter campaign, on their Twitter and their Facebook. It will all be down in the description of this video. You can follow the links and check all these guys out. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later.